Lisa from Northline Express, and in today's video I want to cover some tips to help you prepare for the winter wood burning season. Now throughout the years I've burnt with wood and it saves me hundreds of dollars a year, and I'm really glad I do it, but let me tell you something, it is definitely not something that's just going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. Burning with wood does require some sort of additional work, but if you've got it in you and you're totally into doing it, it's definitely worth doing. So today I'm going to cover from efficient splitting methods to creating a work environment for your splitting area, stacking and some tips for stacking smart, ashes and removal and some great ways that you can put those abundance of ashes to use. So I hope you find these tips handy, and let me know if you've got any more questions and we'll get those answered for you as well. So I'm going to start today with talking about splitting your firewood. When it comes to burning wood, firewood and good firewood is definitely going to be the #1 key to an efficient home fire. And this is something that I learned the hard way. I grew up with my dad burning wood, and he had an outdoor wood boiler, so we didn't have to do a lot of splitting. It was pretty much just cutting it into 24-inch lengths and tossing it in when it was time to stoke it up. But I have a whole different wood burning setup going on. I've got a small indoor wood stove, so I have to actually pay attention to the size of the wood that I'm not only cutting into rounds, but as the pieces I split as well. Now, I am totally capable of using a splitting maul. In fact, sometimes when I've had a bad day, it's great to get outside and take that frustration out on these logs rather than somebody else. However, it definitely can be backbreaking work, and it is time consuming. If I were to split my entire winter's worth of wood that way, it probably would make me go, never mind, I'm going to just flip on the heater. But it's actually something that's very able to help you save money burning wood, and I don't mind doing it, so I've just learned to find some more efficient ways. Now, while you can split your firewood, whether it is wet or dry, it's going to be up to you. The sooner the better, the sooner it's going to season when it's split. If you split it when it's wet, it's going to season faster. But one thing I like also, in addition to my Mingo firewood meter, my log splitter, and my log rack, and my firewood tote to get my firewood inside, as well as my hearth rack, that I need to have on hand, is a moisture meter. Now, there is the old-fashioned method of taking two pieces of seasoned firewood, and when you clank them together, it's going to sound like two baseball bats banging together. Now, while that method may be tried and true, I don't know many of you that want to sit there and bang all your firewood pieces together. Again, a more efficient method, and that's with a firewood moisture meter. It's a very easy tool to use. You're simply going to poke the unit into the grain of your firewood, and it's going to provide the moisture level of the firewood that you've got. Now, a couple things I learned with the moisture meter, and again, I'm not afraid to admit that while I was learning I made a few mistakes. Don't check the moisture level of the bark. It's not going to read appropriately. Make sure that when you're checking the moisture level of your firewood, you're actually checking it on the end grains. There's two prongs, and that's going to make them poke down into your firewood and get a more accurate reading. It's not going to be efficient if you're using the split side here or the side with the bark. Make sure that you're taking your moisture level readings at the end of your firewood on a cut piece with no bark. Another thing about the firewood moisture meter is it's actually kind of important. Rather than just for ease of starting your fire, it's also going to make your fire burn more efficiently and give you more heat. The wetter or greener that your firewood is, it's not going to burn as well. So not only is it going to just sit there and literally sizzle, I'm sure some of you have heard this, I have, where you put your firewood in and you hear it sizzle. That's because it's got too much moisture in it. That moisture, rather than allowing your firewood to burn up and turn into ashes, is going to just release unburned particles up and through your chimney. Now, those unburned particles are going to cool the flue temperature in your chimney, which is going to increase your creosote buildup, which is dangerous because creosote is very flammable and one of the #1 causes for chimney fires in the United States. So a moisture meter may not be the most fancy gadget to have on hand, but it is definitely one that I would consider vital for wood burners to have on hand. Not only is it going to help you check your firewood if you split it green and know when it's ready to use and cycle into your wood that you're going to burn, but if you've got it stored up by the house and some of it may be damper than others, it's going to help you choose the pieces that are going to be ready to burn. In fact, anything with a moisture reading of 13% or higher is not suggested to be used in a wood stove, and the good old method of banging two pieces together isn't going to tell you exactly what percentage you're at. So I would recommend that you invest in a moisture meter. It's going to be something you'll be glad you did. Now, when it comes to firewood, splitting and stacking are going to be two very important parts of this. Now, stacking is important because this is going to help keep your firewood seasoned and dry so that it's ready to burn when it comes time to use it. when you're using your firewood stack, it's going to help, one, keep it organized, and it's also, two, going to help keep it ready to go. Now, a few things to consider when stacking your firewood. I use a method that may be a little different than some people prefer, but I like to have a main firewood rack away from the home. This is going to help keep down the insects, it keeps it out, and it also keeps it in a better place where it's got plenty of room to have adequate airflow through so that during the year, before I need it, it's ready to cure. Also, I keep this smaller rack up by the door. I like the 4-foot rustic natural cedar log rack just for the look I have going here. But it's also one that I don't have to worry about rusting, rotting, mildew, bugs, anything else. It's a nice log rack. Regardless, I like this one because it's going to keep my firewood raised. Keeping your firewood raised is going to help keep the dirt off of the bottom, keep it from becoming impregnated with firewood. It's also going to help it stay drier because it's got better airflow through it. And another nice thing too, a tip I learned the hard way when I was stacking firewood and learned my many trial and error methods here. While stacking your firewood, make sure that you're mixing up the variety of pieces and sizes of firewood. You don't want to stack all of your small pieces on top or your big pieces on bottom or vice versa, because as you're starting your fires, you're going to need some smaller pieces to get that fire burning and then convert over to those larger, nice all night long burning logs to keep your fire going. So a few other things to make sure you're remembering when you're choosing or using a firewood rack is to make sure they're all pretty much going to do the same thing. But your key elements are your size. This is a nice, like I said, 4-foot size to keep up by the front door because I don't take all my firewood inside. I try to keep the minimal amount of firewood inside that I need. I don't want to deal, if you burn with firewood, you probably already know why. I don't want to deal with a lot of the extra bark and debris that falls off. I don't want to also bring all those extra insects inside where it's warm and they're going to love living. So I keep my firewood rack outside of my door filled full. As I need firewood, I grab it from this rack. As this rack gets empty, I fill from my main firewood storage pile. Remember, when you're choosing your firewood rack, there's a few things to keep in mind. Make sure you're choosing a firewood that's going to be adequate size-wise for your specific firewood needs. Make sure you're choosing a firewood rack that is raised off of the ground to help improve and keep your firewood seasoned. And also make sure that you're choosing a firewood rack that includes a cover unless you've got some sort of overhead storage, like I've got an overhang here above coming off of my house, so I don't have to worry about a cover. So those are some things to keep in mind and some tips to help your stacking your firewood go just as well as splitting and keep your home fires burning. So our next topic with wood burning is going to be ashes, how to remove and how to safely store them, and then what do you do with all these ashes that you're left over with. If you're using your wood stove or fireplace frequently, you're going to end up with a lot of these ashes. Now, I've been burning wood for quite a while now, and I found that one of the best ways that I've found to safely contain the ashes and remove them from my home is to buy a galvanized trash pail. They come in a variety of different sizes. I found this particular size works well for me, but it's all metal, and in conjunction with my ash bucket, or coal hod as some people call it, in the inside they're in a variety of different colors. They have them in galvanized. I chose the painted black just because it went well with the other hearth accessories I used. But basically the way these are going to function and work is when you empty out your wood stove or your fireplace, take your ashes, fill them in here. This is going to allow you to safely remove those from your home where they're dangerous and take them out to your containment center outside. I use the galvanized trash pail, and I simply lift the lid, and then I'm going to pour my ashes in. Now, something here that you want to keep in mind, especially if you're pouring your ashes for whatever reason indoors, the slower the better, because you're going to make a plume of dust, and that dust is just, it's messy, so if you want to avoid that, the slower you pour your ashes out, the better. So once you've got your ash bucket empty, you're just going to contain your ashes with that. Now, one thing I did say, garbage pail. Now, don't go out and get a plastic one. Do make sure anything that you're storing your ashes in or moving your ashes in is metal, because that's going to be the safest method. Otherwise, those hot coals, even though they may not look glowing orange, they're still warm, could melt right through any kind of plastic container. So grab yourself a metal coal hod and a galvanized or metal container to store your ashes in outside, and you'll be great. You'll have a great containment system going on for you. Now, okay, we've got the storage and the removal part down with those ashes, but what the heck are all these ashes going to be good for? You've got a compost pile? Great. You can simply add them in and mix them in with your compost pile. Got a slippery driveway in the winter? Use some of these ashes for traction. You've got to do something with them anyway. And one final thing. They make a great soil conditioner. In fact, when I moved in here, I had hardly any grass, but as the years go on and I continue every season to add a little bit of ashes on the bare spots of my yard, I've grown grass. So the ashes, even though they may be a pain to deal with during the winter season, there is a safe way to contain them, and they do come in handy if you look into it a little bit. Well, I hope you found these wood burning tips helpful, and I hope that these are tips that you can take and incorporate into your wood burning process and make preparing for your winter wood burning season that much easier. Hopefully you don't have to learn everything the hard way like I did, but hey, I'm happy to share and admit that I made some mistakes and I wasn't always the best wood burner, but I'm learning as I go. And isn't that what we're all supposed to do? I hope that you found this video helpful, but if you've got more questions, leave me a comment below and I'm more than happy to help answer your questions, or maybe share something with you that helped me get through that mess of a situation in the wood burning process. And if you've got questions about splitting your firewood, stacking your firewood, or storing your firewood, you can always give us a call at 866-667-8454. At Northland Express, home of the buy and try satisfaction guarantee, we're always happy to help.